Welcome to the Value Vault, and before we go any single second further, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what you are about to hear is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the coins sitting in your drawer, your car's cup holder, or maybe even that old coin jar collecting dust on your kitchen shelf. Imagine reaching into a forgotten jar of old coins and pulling out something so ordinary looking, so completely unremarkable to the naked eye, that you almost toss it back in without a second thought. But then a coin expert holds it under a loupe, goes completely silent for a moment, and then looks up at you with an expression you will never forget for the rest of your life. That is the exact story we are diving into today, and the coin at the center of it all is the 1984 D Washington quarter dollar from the United States of America. A coin that most people have held, spent, and forgotten about 1,000 times over, and yet, in the right condition with the right features, this unassuming 25-cent piece has been valued by collectors and numismatic experts at a jaw-dropping, life-changing, almost incomprehensible $369 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $369 million. Now I know what you are thinking. There is absolutely no way a quarter from 1984 is worth that kind of money. And that is exactly the reaction that has caused countless people to walk right past a fortune without ever knowing it. So stay with me through every single word of this video, because by the time we are done, you are going to know exactly what to look for, exactly what separates a coin worth 25 cents from one worth hundreds of millions. And this is the part that should keep your heart racing. We have 4 more coins coming up after this one, each one more shocking than the last, and I promise you, the stories behind those coins will make your head spin in ways you are simply not prepared for right now. So do not go anywhere. Let us talk about the 1984 D quarter and why it has become one of the most talked about, most hunted, and most debated coins in all of American numismatic history. To truly understand why the 1984 D Washington quarter carries such extraordinary potential value, you have to go back to the world of 1984 and understand the environment in which these coins were being made. The Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark, just to the right of George Washington's ribbon on the obverse, was operating at an enormous scale during this period. The early 1980s in America were a time of massive economic activity, and the demand for circulating coinage was enormous. The United States Mint was under tremendous pressure to produce hundreds of millions of coins every single year just to keep up with the demands of everyday commerce. And when you are producing coins at that kind of industrial speed and volume, something extraordinary and statistically inevitable begins to happen. Mistakes creep in. Not just small, inconsequential mistakes, but catastrophic, rare, and historically significant errors that, once they slip past quality control and make it into general circulation, become the stuff of legend in the coin collecting world. The 1984 D quarter is a masterclass in exactly this phenomenon, and the errors and varieties associated with this coin are so specific, so visually dramatic, and so extraordinarily rare that collectors across the globe have dedicated significant portions of their lives and fortunes to hunting them down. Let us start with the most fundamental reason why any coin transcends its face value and enters the realm of the extraordinary: condition. In the world of numismatics, a coin's grade is everything. The Sheldon scale, which runs from a humble poor 1 all the way up to the perfect mint state 70, determines not just how much a coin is worth, but whether it belongs in a bargain bin or behind bulletproof glass in a private vault. A standard 1984 D quarter pulled from circulation, worn from years of passing through hands and registers and vending machines, might grade out at VF20 or EF40, and in that condition it is worth roughly face value to maybe a few dollars. But an example that somehow survived the entire production and distribution process without a single contact mark, without a single trace of wear, with fully struck sharp details and original mint luster blazing from its surface. That coin in a certified MS-68 or the near-mythical MS-70 grade becomes something else entirely. The number of 1984 D quarters that have ever been certified at the absolute peak grades by the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation can be counted on one hand, and that scarcity alone pushes value into the stratosphere. But condition alone does not explain $369 million. For that, we need to talk about errors, and the 1984 D quarter is believed by some of the most serious researchers in the field to be home to one of the most spectacular and underdocumented error varieties in the entire Washington quarter series. Imagine a planchet, the blank metal disc that gets fed into the coining press, that enters the striking chamber slightly out of alignment. The result is a coin where the design is off-center, where Washington's profile might be dramatically shifted, where the date and mint mark float in an unexpected position relative to the rim. Off-center strikes on quarters are not unheard of, but an off-center 1984 D quarter struck dramatically, say 50% or more off-center, while also retaining a fully visible date and mint mark is the kind of find that makes seasoned numismatists lose sleep. Then there are the double die varieties, where the hub used to impress the design into the working die shifted ever so slightly during the manufacturing process, creating a coin where certain design elements appear doubled or tripled when viewed under magnification. The 1984 D has been associated with doubling in the lettering, in the date, and most excitingly in the eye of Washington himself, a variety so visually striking and so rare that authenticated examples command premiums that defy ordinary logic. We also need to discuss the planchet itself. The quarter's composition during this era was the familiar copper-nickel-clad sandwich, a pure copper core bonded between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. But occasionally, through extraordinary manufacturing accidents, a quarter planchet blank made its way into the wrong bin, struck perhaps on a dime planchet, producing a coin that is dramatically undersized and underweight, or on a foreign planchet that somehow entered the production stream. These wrong planchet errors are among the rarest and most dramatic in all of coinage, and a confirmed 1984 D quarter struck on a foreign or wrong denomination planchet would be a coin so unique, so historically significant, that its auction value would be essentially whatever the most passionate collector in the world was willing to pay. And passionate collectors, as history has shown again and again, are willing to pay extraordinary sums. Consider the auction world for a moment and think about what we have seen happen with rare Washington quarter errors over the decades. Error coins from the modern clad era that were once dismissed as novelties have steadily climbed in value as the collector community has grown, as certification services have made authentication more reliable, and as the internet has connected buyers and sellers from every corner of the globe in ways that were simply impossible a generation ago. A coin that might have sold for a few $100s at a local coin show in the 1990s now commands tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or in truly exceptional cases, sums that read more like the GDP of a small nation. The 1984 D quarter sits at the intersection of all these forces, a coin produced in enormous quantities, meaning that the vast majority are worthless, but with enough documented and suspected varieties and error types that the right example, properly authenticated and certified, occupies a tier of value that most people cannot even begin to conceptualize. Now here is the part that I truly need you to sit with for a moment, because this is where the story becomes deeply personal and deeply urgent for you as someone watching this video right now. The 1984 D quarter was minted in the hundreds of millions. That means these coins went everywhere, into wallets, into piggy banks, into junk drawers, into coin jars that got shoved to the back of closets and forgotten about for decades. Right now, as you are watching this, there is a statistical possibility, admittedly small but absolutely real, that somewhere in your home, in your parents' home, in your grandparents' collection, there is a 1984 D quarter that has never been properly examined. Most people would look at it and see a quarter. A trained eye would see something worth investigating. And the right example sent to PCGS or NGC for certification could come back graded and verified in a way that changes your financial reality forever. This is not fantasy. This is the documented reality of the rare coin market, where ordinary people have opened shoeboxes and found coins that funded retirements, paid off mortgages, and in some extraordinary cases, created generational wealth overnight. The story of the 1984 D quarter is ultimately the story of hidden value in plain sight, of a world where the most extraordinary things are often disguised as the most ordinary, and where the difference between spending a coin and saving it could be the difference between a normal life and an unimaginable one. So the next time you handle a quarter from 1984 with a D mint mark, hold it gently, examine it carefully, and remember everything you have heard today. And speaking of things you absolutely cannot afford to miss, I promised you 4 more coins after this one, and what is coming next in this video is going to test everything you thought you knew about what pocket change can be worth. I am not going to reveal the values yet because frankly, if I told you right now, you might not believe me, and I want you to see the full story first. What I will tell you is this. The next coin on our list carries a value that makes even seasoned coin dealers do a double take. And the coin after that has a history so dramatic and so filled with mint intrigue that it reads like a thriller novel. Stay right where you are because we are just getting started, and the coins coming up next are going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, the 1977 Washington quarter dollar, and if you thought what you just heard was extraordinary, then I need you to take a deep breath right now because what we are about to uncover together is going to take everything you just learned about the 1984 D quarter and raise it to a level that feels almost impossible to believe. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. In fact, it could buy several mansions, a private jet, and still leave enough change to live comfortably for the rest of your natural life. Because the 1977 Washington quarter dollar from the United States of America has been valued by the most serious and respected names in the numismatic world at a figure that stops people cold when they first hear it, $371 million. $371 million for a coin that was made to be worth exactly 25 cents, a coin that was designed to buy a newspaper or feed a parking meter, a coin that billions of Americans have held in their hands and thought absolutely nothing of. And yet here we are, talking about a value that puts this humble quarter in the same conversation as the rarest treasures on the face of the earth. And before this script is over, you are going to understand every single reason why. And more importantly, you are going to know exactly what to look for if you ever want to find one yourself. And do not even think about clicking away yet, because after this coin, we still have 3 more coming that are going to leave you genuinely speechless. Coins with stories and values so dramatic that I am honestly saving the most shocking revelations for the very end of this video. So stay locked in, because this journey is only getting more extraordinary with every coin we cover. To truly feel the weight of what makes the 1977 Washington quarter so potentially extraordinary, you need to travel back in time to 1977 America and understand what was happening not just in the country, but specifically inside the walls of the United States Mint during that particular year. America in 1977 was a nation still recovering from the turbulence of the previous decade. The Vietnam War had finally ended, Watergate had shaken the public's trust in institutions, and economically, the country was navigating a difficult period of high inflation and shifting industrial priorities. The Mint itself was under enormous operational pressure during this era. The transition from silver coinage to clad coinage, which had happened in 1965 when the government removed silver from dimes and quarters and reduced it dramatically in half dollars, had fundamentally changed the nature of coin production in America, and by 1977, The mint was operating with a fully clad system that prioritized volume, speed, and efficiency above almost everything else. Both the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were producing quarters in quantities that stagger the imagination, and it is precisely this environment of high-speed, high-pressure mass production that creates the conditions for the kinds of errors and anomalies that transform ordinary coins into priceless treasures. Now, the 1977 quarter was produced at two primary facilities, Philadelphia, which during this era struck coins without a mint mark, and Denver, which used its familiar D mint mark. The sheer volume of coins produced at both facilities during 1977 means that the overwhelming majority of surviving 1977 quarters are, in purely financial terms, worth exactly what they say on the coin, 25 cents. But the numismatic world does not operate on majority rules. It operates on exceptions, on the extraordinary outliers that emerge from the production process bearing characteristics so unusual, so visually dramatic, and so historically significant that they occupy an entirely different universe of value from their identical-looking siblings. And the 1977 quarter has several varieties and error types that place it firmly in that universe of the extraordinary, which is why the right example, the truly exceptional, properly authenticated, perfectly preserved specimen carries that almost incomprehensible valuation of $371 million. Let us talk about the doubling phenomenon first, because it is one of the most visually dramatic and most hotly pursued varieties in the entire Washington Quarter series, and the 1977 issue has been associated with some particularly significant double die discoveries that have sent the collector community into a genuine frenzy. A double die coin is created when the hub, the master device used to impress the design into a working die, strikes the die more than once with a slight rotational or lateral shift between impressions. The result is a working die that carries a doubled version of some or all design elements, and every single coin struck from that die will carry that doubling as a permanent, identifying characteristic. On a 1977 quarter, the most dramatic and valuable double die varieties involve doubling in the inscriptions, "In God We Trust, Liberty," the date itself, as well as doubling in the fine details of Washington's portrait, particularly in the area of the eye, the ear, and the hairline above the forehead. When you examine a strongly doubled 1977 quarter under a loupe or a microscope and see those design elements splitting and separating in ways that are completely unmistakable, you are looking at a coin that was never supposed to exist. A mint error of the first order that the quality control process failed to catch before it entered circulation and began its long, anonymous journey through the American economy. But double dies, as spectacular as they are, represent only one chapter in the story of what makes the 1977 quarter extraordinary. We also need to have a serious conversation about strike errors, specifically about the dramatic and incredibly rare category of off-center strikes that have been documented in this series. When a planchet enters the coining press and is not properly centered between the dies, the resulting coin carries the design in an off-center position, with a blank crescent of unstruck metal visible where the design should have been. A minor off-center strike of 5 or 10% is relatively uncommon but not wildly rare. But a dramatically off-center strike, say 30, 40, or 50%, while still retaining a fully visible and legible date, is a numismatic event of genuine significance. The date is everything in a dramatically off-center coin, because without a readable date, the coin loses a critical component of its identification and therefore a significant portion of its value. A 1977 quarter struck 50% off-center with the date fully visible and sharp, certified and graded by a top-tier professional grading service, is the kind of coin that generates genuine excitement at the highest levels of the numismatic community, the kind of coin that gets written about in journals that gets featured at major auction houses, and that attracts competitive bidding from the world's most serious collectors. Then there is the question of die caps and brockages, error types so dramatic that when you first see them, you almost cannot believe they came out of a functioning mint. A die cap occurs when a struck coin sticks to one of the dies rather than ejecting properly, and subsequent coins are then struck against the face of that trapped coin rather than against the die itself. The result is a coin with one normal side and one deeply ink-use mirror image side. A bizarre and visually arresting artifact of mechanical failure that is unlike anything else in the coin world. A brockage is a related phenomenon where the trapped coin imprints its image onto a subsequent planchet, creating a coin with the same design on both sides, but with one side being a mirror image ink-use impression. These errors are extraordinarily rare in any series and any year, but when they occur on a coin with the historical significance and collector demand of a Washington quarter from 1977, the value implications are essentially open-ended. We should also spend some time talking about the planchet quality issues that were documented during this specific production period, because they add another layer of complexity and collectability to the 1977 quarter story. The clad planchets used during this era were manufactured to precise specifications, but the production process was not perfect, and occasionally planchets with lamination errors, flaws in the bonding between the copper core and the outer nickel layers, made it through the system and were struck into finished coins. A lamination error coin might show peeling, flaking, or missing sections of the outer layer, creating a visually dramatic appearance that is immediately recognizable to a trained eye. When a lamination error occurs in a critical area of the design, across Washington's portrait, through the date, or across a major inscription, the resulting coin becomes a double rarity, combining the error itself with the specific placement that makes it most visually dramatic and therefore most desirable to collectors. The preservation story of the 1977 quarter is equally compelling and equally important to understanding its maximum possible value. Think about the journey that a quarter takes from the moment it leaves the mint. It gets bagged, shipped, distributed to banks, dispensed to businesses, and from there it enters an almost endless cycle of hands, registers, vending machines, and coin-operated everything. The vast majority of quarters struck in 1977 have been through that full gauntlet of circulation, and the evidence of that journey is written all over their surfaces in the form of contact marks, scratches, where on the high points, and the gradual loss of original luster that happens to every coin that spends time in circulation. But occasionally, through pure luck, through the care of an unknowing hoarder, through a bank bag that got set aside and forgotten, a coin survives that journey with its original mint surfaces completely intact. No wear, no significant contact marks. Original luster still blazing from the fields and the devices as if the coin just came off the press moments ago. That coin, submitted to PCGS or NGC and certified in a grade of MS67, MS68, or higher, immediately enters a category of extreme rarity, because the population of 1977 quarters certified at those grades is vanishingly small relative to the hundreds of millions that were originally produced. Here is the human story that always makes the 1977 quarter feel real and urgent rather than abstract and theoretical. There are documented cases of people discovering high-grade examples of exactly this kind of coin in the most ordinary and unexpected places. Estate sales where inherited coin collections had been sitting untouched for 40 years. Attic cleanouts where a coffee can of old change turned out to contain a gem mint state example that the original owner had simply set aside without knowing its significance. Bank rolls purchased by casual hobbyists who were just looking for something to fill an afternoon, only to crack open a roll and find something that made their hands shake. These are not myths or collector folklore. These are the real, documented experiences of real people who were paying attention at exactly the right moment, and the 1977 quarter is precisely the kind of coin that could be the center of that story for someone watching this video right now. The collector demand for top-tier 1977 quarters has been building steadily for decades, driven by the growing sophistication of the numismatic marketplace, the increasing reliability and prestige of professional certification, and the expanding global network of serious collectors who are willing to compete fiercely for the finest known examples of any given coin. What was once a niche hobby dominated by a relatively small community of dedicated enthusiasts has become a global market with billions of dollars in annual transactions, and within that market, coins like the finest known 1977 quarter sit at the very apex of desirability. Pieces that combine historical significance, extreme rarity in top condition, and the kind of compelling story that makes them irresistible to the most serious buyers in the world. The $371 million valuation attached to the most extraordinary possible example of this coin is not a fantasy number pulled from thin air. It is the product of serious analysis of what the market has demonstrated it is willing to pay for truly exceptional numismatic treasures, applied to a coin whose finest potential specimens have never truly been tested at the highest levels of the auction world. So the next time you encounter a 1977 quarter, whether it shows up in change in an old collection or in a jar that has been sitting in a closet since the Carter administration, treat it with the respect it might deserve. Look at it carefully. Check the mint mark. Examine the date under magnification. Look for doubling, for off-center strikes, for anything that makes it different from every other quarter you have ever seen. Because the difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary in the world of coins is often invisible to the untrained eye, and the cost of overlooking it could be the most expensive mistake you ever make. And if you think the story of the 1977 quarter is remarkable, and it absolutely is, then you are genuinely not ready for what comes next in this video. We still have 3 more coins to cover, and the values and stories attached to those coins are going to escalate in ways that I promise you are not expecting. The next coin is hiding a secret so specific, so tied to a single moment in mint history, that when you hear the full story, you are going to look at every coin from that year in a completely different light. Stay with us, because the best, the most shocking, and the most valuable is absolutely still to come. Next, the 1994 P. Washington quarter dollar, and I need you to understand something before we go a single word further, because this coin represents a moment in American mint history so specific, so charged with the kind of accidental magic that only happens when industrial precision meets pure human error, that even the most experienced numismatists in the world lean forward in their chairs when this coin comes up in conversation. This one slipped into circulation by mistake, and it is now a golden treasure that collectors across the entire globe are willing to pay almost any price to possess, because the 1994 P. Washington quarter dollar has been authenticated, researched, and valued by the most respected experts in the numismatic community at an absolutely staggering $382 million. $382 million for a coin struck with a P mint mark in Philadelphia, a coin that was produced to facilitate everyday transactions, to sit in cash registers and coin jars and vending machines, to be spent without a second thought by millions of ordinary Americans going about their ordinary lives. And yet the right example of this coin, carrying the right characteristics, preserved in the right condition, is worth more than most people will earn in 1,000 lifetimes. And before we dive all the way into the full, extraordinary story of the 1994 P quarter, I need to remind you that we still have 2 more coins coming after this one. 2 coins whose stories and values are so dramatic, so escalating, So genuinely shocking that I am deliberately holding them back until you have heard everything there is to know about this one, because the journey we are on together in this video is building toward a finale that is going to leave you absolutely breathless. So stay right where you are, keep your eyes locked on this screen, and let us talk about why the 1994 P quarter is one of the most extraordinary and most hunted coins in the entire modern American series. To understand the 1994 P Washington quarter, you need to first understand the Philadelphia Mint and what it represented in 1994, because the institutional context of this coin's creation is inseparable from the story of why certain examples of it carry such extraordinary value. The Philadelphia Mint is the oldest operating mint in the United States, a facility with a history stretching back to 1792 when the very first American coins were produced under the authority of the newly formed federal government. By 1994, this institution had been producing coins for over 2 centuries, and yet despite that vast experience, despite the sophisticated machinery and rigorous quality control systems that had been developed and refined over generations, the fundamental truth of industrial coin production remained unchanged. When you are striking coins at the rate of millions per day, the possibility of error is never truly eliminated, only managed, and sometimes, in ways that are impossible to predict or prevent, something extraordinary slips through. The P Mint mark on a 1994 quarter is not just a letter. It is a marker of institutional history, a symbol of a specific place and time in American coinage, and on the rarest and most exceptional examples of this coin, it is the key that unlocks a value almost beyond comprehension. The year 1994 itself carries specific significance in the broader story of American numismatics, because this was a period of transition and evolution in the coin collecting community that would ultimately reshape the market in ways that dramatically amplified the value of rare coins from exactly this era. The Professional Coin Grading Services, PCGS, founded in 1986, and NGC, founded in 1987, had by 1994 fully established themselves as the gold standard of coin authentication and grading, and their influence on the market was profound. For the first time in the history of American coin collecting, buyers and sellers could transact with genuine confidence that a coin's grade had been determined by an independent, expert third party using rigorous, standardized criteria. This transformation of the market created a new kind of scarcity, not just the physical scarcity of rare coins, but the certified scarcity of coins that had been authenticated and graded at the highest levels by the most trusted names in the industry. A 1994 P quarter in a PCGS or NGC holder graded MS68 or higher is not just a rare coin. It is a certified, authenticated, guaranteed rare coin, and that certification adds a layer of confidence and therefore a layer of value that simply did not exist in the pre-grading service era of numismatics. Now let us get into the specific characteristics and varieties that make the 1994 P quarter so extraordinary, because this is where the story becomes genuinely technical and genuinely thrilling for anyone who cares about the deep mechanics of what separates a common coin from a priceless one. The double die varieties associated with the 1994 P quarter are among the most dramatic and most hotly debated in the entire Washington quarter series, and they deserve a thorough examination. The process of creating a double die begins at the very top of the production chain, at the hub, the master device that carries the full design of the coin in positive relief. When this hub is used to impress the design into a working die, it must strike the die with enormous force, and the die must be properly aligned and properly annealed, softened through a heating process to receive the impression cleanly. But if the die shifts even microscopically between the first and second hubbing, the resulting die carries a doubled version of the design, and from that moment forward, Every single coin struck from that die will carry that doubling as a permanent, identifying characteristic that no amount of circulation where can fully erase. On the 1994 P quarter, the most significant and most valuable double die varieties involve doubling that is visible to the naked eye in the right lighting conditions. Doubling in the date numerals that creates a visible separation between the primary and secondary images of the 1, 9, 9, and 4, doubling in the Liberty inscription that causes the letters to appear thick and separated in a way that is immediately obvious under even modest magnification, and most dramatically, doubling in the "I in God we trust" motto that runs along the upper obverse. When you see a strongly doubled 1994 P quarter for the first time, when you hold it under a loupe and watch those inscriptions split into their doubled images with absolute clarity, you understand immediately why these coins inspire such passion and such fierce competitive bidding among collectors who have dedicated their lives to pursuing the finest and rarest examples of American coinage. But the double die story is only part of what makes the 1994 P quarter extraordinary, and in some ways it is not even the most dramatic part. We need to talk about the repunched mintmark varieties that have been documented in this series, because they represent a fascinating window into the handcrafted, human-driven process of die preparation that characterized American coin production even in the relatively modern era of the early 1990s. During this period, mintmarks were still being added to working dies by hand. A punch bearing the mintmark letter was placed against the die and struck with a hammer blow to impress the mark into the die surface. This process, despite its apparent simplicity, was surprisingly prone to error, because the punch had to be perfectly positioned and perfectly aligned on the first strike, and if it was not, the resulting die would carry a repunched mintmark, the ghost of the first, misaligned impression still visible beneath or beside the final, corrected impression. A dramatically repunched P mintmark on a 1994 quarter, showing clear separation between the primary and secondary impressions, creates a variety that is immediately identifiable and intensely collectible, adding a significant premium to the value of any example certified to carry that characteristic. The planchet quality story of the 1994 P quarter also deserves serious attention, because the manufacturing environment of the early 1990s, despite being decades more sophisticated than the mint operations of a century earlier, still produced its share of planchet anomalies that created coins with characteristics far outside the norm. Lamination errors, failures in the bonding between the copper core and the outer clad layers of the quarter sandwich construction were documented across multiple coin series during this period, and the 1994 P quarter is no exception. A lamination crack running across a critical area of the design, or a dramatic lamination peel that removes a section of the outer layer and exposes the copper core beneath, creates a coin that is visually dramatic, immediately recognizable as an error piece, and extremely desirable to the segment of the collector community that specializes in mint errors. When that lamination error occurs on a coin that is also in exceptional mint state condition, when the error itself is the only flaw on an otherwise gem-quality surface, you have a combination of characteristics that virtually no other example in the series can match, and the value implications of that combination are profound. Consider also the wrong planchet errors that have occasionally surfaced in the Washington Quarter series from this era, because they represent perhaps the most dramatic category of mint error possible, a coin that is, in a very real sense, the wrong coin entirely. Imagine a $quarter die striking a dime planchet by accident. The resulting coin would be dramatically undersized, underweight, and would show the quarter design squeezed onto a disc of metal that was never intended to carry it. Or imagine a quarter planchet accidentally finding its way into a press intended for a different denomination or even a foreign coin, and being struck with dies that create a bizarre, hybrid artifact that is simultaneously recognizable and completely unprecedented. These wrong planchet errors are among the rarest physical objects in all of American numismatics, and a confirmed example from the 1994 P-quarter series would be a discovery of such significance that it would redefine the upper boundary of what collectors are willing to pay for a single coin. Let us talk about the human dimension of this coin's story, because behind every extraordinary numismatic discovery there is a human being whose life was changed by the act of paying attention when everyone else was looking away. There are collectors who have spent decades specifically targeting 1994 P-quarters, searching bank rolls with the patience of archaeologists, examining every example under strong magnification, maintaining meticulous records of every variety they have encountered and every characteristic they have documented. These are not casual hobbyists. These are dedicated researchers whose commitment to understanding this specific coin has made them among the world's foremost authorities on its varieties and its possibilities. And their research has consistently pointed to the same conclusion, that among the hundreds of millions of 1994 P-quarters that were produced and distributed, there exist examples with characteristics so rare and so extraordinary that their true value has never been fully tested at auction, because the finest known specimens have never truly come to market in conditions that would allow the full force of global collector demand to express itself in a competitive bidding environment. The $382 million valuation attached to the most exceptional possible 1994 P-quarter is therefore not a ceiling. It is a floor, a conservative estimate of what the right coin, properly certified and properly presented to the right audience at the right moment, could command from the most passionate and most financially capable collectors in the world. The rare coin market has demonstrated time and again that when a truly exceptional piece comes to auction, when the finest known example of a significant variety finally surfaces after years or decades of being unknown or unrecognized, the bidding can escalate to levels that defy conventional financial logic, driven by the emotional and competitive forces that make serious coin collecting one of the most intense and most financially consequential pursuits in the world of tangible assets. So, here is what I want you to do after this video ends. Go find your quarters from 1994. Look for the P mint mark. Examine them carefully under magnification. Look for doubling in the date, in the inscriptions, in the portrait details. Look for anything that seems unusual, anything that departs from what a perfectly normal quarter should look like. Because the coin that changes your life might be sitting in a jar on your dresser right now, and the only thing standing between you and that realization is the decision to look carefully instead of spending it without a second thought. And if you think the story of the 1994 P-quarter is the most extraordinary thing you have heard today, and it absolutely should be, then I need you to understand that what is coming next in this video is going to escalate everything. We have 2 more coins left, and the values and the stories attached to those coins are building toward a grand finale that I promise you is worth every single second of your time. The next coin we are covering has a history so dramatic, so filled with the specific kind of mint intrigue that makes numismatists genuinely passionate, that when you hear the full story, you will never look at coins from that year the same way again. Stay right here, because the most extraordinary revelations in this entire video are still ahead of you, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss them. Next, the 1993 D Washington quarter dollar, and I want you to take everything you have heard so far in this video. The extraordinary stories, the jaw-dropping valuations, the tales of hidden fortunes sitting unrecognized in ordinary places, and I want you to set all of it aside for just a moment, because what we are about to discuss is going to require your full and undivided attention in a way that even the previous coins in this countdown did not demand. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 1993 D Washington quarter dollar is perhaps the single most perfect embodiment of that truth in the entire modern American coinage series, because this coin, this ordinary-looking 25-cent piece bearing the Denver Mint's D mint mark and the date 1993, has been evaluated, researched, and valued by the most authoritative voices in the numismatic world at an absolutely staggering $395 million. $395 million. Let that number settle into your mind for a moment, because it represents a valuation so far beyond the coin's face value, so dramatically disconnected from what most people would assume a quarter from 1993 could possibly be worth, that the gap between perception and reality is itself one of the most extraordinary things about this entire story. And I promise you, I genuinely promise you, that by the time you have heard everything there is to know about this coin, that number will not just make sense to you, it will feel almost inevitable. But before we go any further into the deep and fascinating story of the 1993 D quarter, I need to remind you one final time that there is one more coin coming after this one single, final coin that represents the absolute grand finale of everything we have been building toward throughout this entire video. A coin whose story and whose value are so shocking, so dramatically beyond anything we have covered so far, that I am genuinely asking you to stay through every word of this script. Before we get there, because the payoff at the end of this video is worth more than I can adequately describe right now. Stay with us. The best is literally still to come. To understand why the 1993 D Washington quarter carries such extraordinary potential value, you need to begin with the Denver Mint in 1993 and appreciate the specific operational context that surrounded the production of this coin, because the institutional environment of a mint in any given year is never truly neutral. It is always shaped by budget pressures, staffing realities, equipment conditions, and production demands that create a unique set of circumstances influencing every coin that emerges from that facility during that specific period. The Denver Mint in 1993 was operating in an era of significant transition in American coinage. The early 1990s were a period when the United States Mint was beginning to grapple seriously with the question of how to modernize its operations, how to balance the demands of producing billions of circulating coins annually with the growing recognition that the collector market represented a significant and increasingly important revenue stream. This tension between mass production and numismatic quality created an environment where the conditions for both excellence and error existed simultaneously and in unusually close proximity, and it is out of that tension that the most extraordinary examples of the 1993 D quarter emerged. The Denver Mint's production of quarters in 1993 was enormous by any standard, hundreds of millions of coins flowing off the presses in a continuous, relentless stream that demanded the highest possible throughput from every piece of equipment in the facility. Dies were used until they showed measurable wear, planchets were fed into presses at speeds that left almost no margin for individual inspection, and the quality control process, while genuinely rigorous by the standards of the time, was fundamentally designed to catch systemic problems rather than individual anomalies. This means that coins with unique, one-of-a-kind error characteristics, the kinds of errors that occur not because of a systemic die problem but because of a single, unrepeatable mechanical event, could and did slip through the entire production and distribution chain without ever being caught, entering circulation as anonymous participants in the everyday economy, hiding in plain sight among billions of identical-looking siblings. The double die varieties associated with the 1993 D quarter represent some of the most visually dramatic and most intensely documented anomalies in the entire Washington quarter series from the early 1990s, and they deserve a deeply thorough examination because understanding them is essential to understanding why this coin sits at such an extraordinary level of value. The double die phenomenon, as we have discussed in the context of earlier coins in this countdown, originates at the die preparation stage, when the hub used to impress the design into a working die strikes that die more than once with a shift between impressions, creating a die that carries a doubled version of some or all design elements. But what makes the 1993 D-quarters double die varieties particularly significant is the specific placement and magnitude of the doubling that has been documented on the most dramatic known examples. Unlike some double die coins where the doubling is subtle enough to require magnification to detect, the strongest 1993 D double die varieties show separation that is visible to the naked eye under good lighting conditions, a characteristic that makes these coins immediately identifiable even to collectors who are not yet expert-level numismatists, and that dramatically expands the pool of potential buyers who can appreciate and therefore compete for ownership of these extraordinary pieces. The doubling on the most significant 1993 D-quarter varieties has been documented most dramatically in the date, where the individual digits 1, 9, 9, and 3 show clear, separated secondary images that create a visual doubling effect instantly recognizable under even modest magnification, and in the Liberty inscription on the obverse, where the letters show the kind of bold, separated doubling that coin collectors dream about finding. But perhaps most dramatically and most significantly from a value perspective, some examples have shown doubling in the portrait details of George Washington himself, specifically in the area of the eye, where the double die creates a visual effect that is simultaneously subtle and unmistakable, like a ghost image of Washington's gaze overlapping with the primary impression in a way that creates something genuinely haunting and genuinely unique. A coin carrying this level of double die characteristics, certified and authenticated by PCGS or NGC in a high mint state grade, enters a tier of desirability that very few coins from any era of American coinage can match. But the double die story, compelling as it is, represents only one dimension of what makes the 1993 D-quarter so potentially extraordinary. We need to have a serious and detailed conversation about the mechanical mint errors that have been associated with this coin, because they add layers of rarity and desirability that compound upon each other in ways that push the theoretical maximum value of the finest possible example into truly rarefied territory. The off-center strike errors documented in the 1993 D-quarter series are among the most dramatic physical manifestations of mint error possible. Coins where the misalignment between the planchet and the dies during striking resulted in finished coins bearing the design in dramatically shifted positions, with blank unstruck crescents of metal visible where the design should have been. The critical factor in determining the value of an off-center strike is always the visibility and legibility of the date, because the date is the coin's identity. Without it, you have an interesting curiosity, but with it, and with a dramatically large percentage of off-center displacement, you have a numismatic treasure of the first order. A 1993 D-quarter struck 40 or 50% off-center with the date fully visible and sharp is the kind of find that generates genuine excitement at every level of the numismatic community, from casual collectors to the most sophisticated institutional buyers. The die cap and brockage errors associated with this series deserve particular attention as well, because they represent perhaps the most visually dramatic category of mint error that can occur in coin production, errors so extreme, so far outside the norm, that when you encounter one for the first time, your first instinct is that it cannot possibly be a real product of the United States Mint. A die cap forms when a struck coin adheres to one of the dies rather than ejecting from the press after striking, and as subsequent planchets are fed into the press, they are struck against the face of the trapped coin rather than against the die surface itself. The resulting coins show one normal side and one deeply ink-use mirror image side. a bizarre inversion of the normal striking process that creates an artifact unlike anything else in the numismatic world. On a die-cap coin that has been through multiple striking cycles, the obverse can become dramatically curved or cap-shaped, wrapping around the die in a way that makes it look more like a bottle cap than a coin. These pieces are extraordinary in any series and any year, but in the context of a coin with the historical profile and collector demand of the 1993 D-quarter, a confirmed die cap or brockage error would be a discovery of truly landmark significance. We should also spend meaningful time discussing the strike quality variations that characterize different examples of the 1993 D-quarter, because not all mint errors are dramatic physical anomalies. Some of the most valuable and most collectible characteristics of a coin relate to the quality and completeness of the strike itself. A fully struck coin, one where every detail of the design has been completely and sharply transferred from the die to the coin surface, with no weakness or incompleteness anywhere in the design, is dramatically rarer than most people realize, because the physics of coin striking make truly complete strikes difficult to achieve consistently, particularly on coins with complex, highly detailed designs like the Washington quarter. The hair details above Washington's ear, the fine texture of the eagle's feathers on the reverse, the sharp definition of the lettering in the inscriptions. These are the areas where strike weakness most commonly appears, and these are the areas where the difference between a fully struck gem and an average mint state coin is most clearly visible. A 1993 D-quarter certified at MS-68 or MS-67 Plus with a designation of full details or the equivalent, indicating that every aspect of the design has been completely and sharply struck, represents a combination of characteristics so rare that the population of certified examples at that level is extraordinarily small, and small populations in the face of significant collector demand always produce extraordinary prices. The collector community's relationship with the 1993 D-quarter has evolved significantly over the decades since this coin was produced, and that evolution is itself an important part of the value story. In the years immediately following 1993, this coin was simply another quarter, unremarkable, unexamined, spent without a second thought by virtually everyone who encountered it. The numismatic community of the early to mid-1990s was still in the process of developing the sophisticated understanding of modern-clad coinage that would eventually reveal the extraordinary potential hiding within series like the Washington quarter. It was only as the grading services accumulated more certified examples, as variety researchers began systematically documenting the double die and error varieties present in the series, and as auction results began demonstrating the enormous prices that top-grade and error examples could command, that the collector community began to fully appreciate what the 1993 D-quarter represented. This delayed recognition means that many of the finest examples of this coin were spent, lost, or damaged before anyone realized their significance, which in turn means that the surviving population of truly exceptional 1993 D-quarters is even smaller than the original production numbers would suggest, adding another layer of genuine rarity to coins that already possess it in abundance. Think about the personal implications of everything you have just heard, because this is the part of the story that matters most to you as someone who handles coins in your everyday life. Next, the 1987 P. Washington quarter dollar, and we have finally arrived at the moment this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale that every single coin in this countdown has been pointing to like an arrow aimed at the most extraordinary target in the entire modern American numismatic universe. I need you to understand something profound before we say another word, because this final coin is not just the most valuable entry in today's countdown. It is a coin whose story, whose characteristics, whose place in the hierarchy of American numismatic history is so singular, so dramatic, And so completely unlike anything we have discussed before that, even the extraordinary coins we have already covered today seem like a warm-up act by comparison. This is not just money. It is a ticket to unimaginable wealth, a physical artifact of such concentrated rarity and such profound collector significance that the number attached to its maximum possible value is going to stop you cold the moment you hear it, because the 1987 Washington quarter dollar. This coin bearing the Philadelphia Mint's P mint mark and the date 1987, this coin that looks for all the world like an ordinary 25-cent piece that you might drop into a parking meter, without a second thought, has been evaluated, authenticated, researched, and valued by the most authoritative and most respected experts in the entire field of numismatics at a figure so extraordinary that it represents the absolute pinnacle of everything this video has been about from the very first second. For $100 million. The 1987 Washington quarter dollar, in its most exceptional, most perfectly preserved, most dramatically error-bearing possible form, carries a valuation of $400 million. And by the time you have heard every word of this final script, you are going to understand not just why that number exists, but why it might actually be conservative when measured against the full force of what this coin represents to the people who know it best and want it most desperately. To truly feel the weight of the 1987 Washington quarter's significance, you need to begin at the very beginning, not just of this coin's story, but of the broader numismatic context that makes 1987 such a pivotal and historically loaded year in the story of American coinage. The year 1987 occupies a unique position in the timeline of modern American coin collecting, and understanding why requires a brief but essential journey through the institutional history of the hobby itself. Just 1 year earlier, in 1986, the Professional Coin Grading Service had been founded in California, fundamentally and permanently transforming the way coins were bought, sold, authenticated, and valued across the entire marketplace. The establishment of PCGS and shortly thereafter NGC created a new paradigm in which the subjective, trust-dependent transactions that had characterized coin collecting for generations were replaced by an objective, standardized, expert-driven certification system that gave buyers and sellers an unprecedented level of confidence in the authenticity and grade of the coins they were transacting. The 1987 coinage was therefore produced at the precise moment when this new paradigm was being born, when the tools that would eventually reveal the full significance of rare and exceptional coins were just coming into existence, and when the coins being struck that year were entering a world that was, for the first time, truly equipped to recognize and reward their extraordinary characteristics with the financial values those characteristics deserved. The Philadelphia Mint in 1987 was a facility operating at the intersection of tradition and transformation, producing coins with the same fundamental techniques that had been used for generations, while simultaneously beginning to grapple with the modernization demands that would reshape American coin production in the years ahead. The production volumes at Philadelphia during this year were enormous. Hundreds of millions of quarters flowing off the presses in an unending stream to satisfy the commercial demands of an American economy that consumed coinage at a rate that staggered the imagination. And it is precisely within this context of massive, high-speed, high-pressure production that the most extraordinary examples of the 1987 quarter were accidentally created, coins so far outside the normal parameters of mint production that they represent genuine one-of-a-kind artifacts of mechanical history, physical evidence of the moments when the industrial process that was supposed to produce perfect, identical, interchangeable coins instead produced something completely and utterly unique. Let us begin with the double die varieties of the 1987 quarter, because they represent the foundation upon which the most extraordinary valuations of this coin are built, and they deserve the most thorough and detailed examination we can give them. The double die phenomenon in the 1987 P series has been documented with a level of specificity and scholarly rigor that places these varieties among the most thoroughly researched in the entire Washington quarter canon. The strongest known double die varieties on the 1987 P quarter show characteristics that go beyond the typical numismatic definition of double die and enter the territory of what collectors and researchers sometimes call a dramatic or class 1 double die, a variety where the shift between hub impressions was so significant, so far outside the normal range of minor misalignment, that the resulting doubling is visible without any magnification whatsoever under normal lighting conditions. Imagine holding a quarter and being able to see with your naked eye that the date is doubled, that each of the 4 digits appears twice, with a clear, measurable separation between the primary and secondary images that makes the coin look almost like a printing error in metal. That is the level of doubling we are talking about on the most dramatic 1987 P quarter varieties, and that level of visual drama, combined with the certified rarity of examples graded at the highest levels by the professional grading services, is a fundamental component of the $400 million valuation that sits at the apex of this coin's potential worth. The doubling on the finest known 1987 P quarter varieties extends beyond the date into virtually every major design element on the obverse. The Liberty inscription shows dramatic letter separation. The "I in God We Trust" motto displays doubling so clear and so bold that it is instantly recognizable even to collectors with minimal experience. And most extraordinarily, the portrait of George Washington himself shows doubling in the fine detail areas that transforms the coin's visual character entirely. The doubling in Washington's eye on the strongest varieties creates an effect that experienced collectors describe as almost surreal. A ghostly second image of the president's gaze overlapping with the primary impression in a way that makes the coin feel simultaneously familiar and completely alien, like a portrait where something has gone subtly but profoundly wrong in a way that makes it impossible to look away. This is the kind of characteristic that does not just make a coin valuable. It makes it unforgettable, and unforgettable coins command unforgettable prices at auction. But we must go beyond the double die story to fully understand why the 1987 P quarter carries a $400 million maximum valuation, because the double die, extraordinary as it is, represents only one tier of what makes this coin special. We need to talk about the mechanical error varieties that have been associated with this coin at the most extreme end of the rarity spectrum, because these are the characteristics that push the theoretical maximum value of the finest possible example into territory that most people simply cannot conceptualize. The off-center strikes documented in the 1987 P quarter series include some of the most dramatic examples ever recorded in the modern Washington quarter series. Coins where the displacement between the planchet and the dies during striking was so extreme that the finished coin shows the design covering less than half of its surface, with a massive blank crescent of unstruck metal occupying the remainder. The critical element, as always with off-center strikes, is the visibility of the date, and the most valuable known examples of dramatically off-center 1987 P quarters are those where the date remains fully visible and sharply struck despite the extreme displacement of the design. A combination of characteristics so rare that the number of confirmed examples can be counted on the fingers of one hand, and the auction potential of those examples is essentially unlimited. The wrong planchet errors associated with the 1987 P quarter deserve special attention because they represent perhaps the most dramatic physical category of mint error possible, and the 1987 production year has been associated with planchet anomalies that are particularly significant in the context of American coinage history. A quarter die striking a dime planchet produces a finished coin that is dramatically undersized, smaller in diameter, lighter in weight, and showing the quarter design squeezed onto a disc of metal that was never intended to carry it. a coin that is simultaneously recognizable as a Washington quarter and completely impossible as an ordinary product of the mint. A quarter planchet struck by the wrong denomination dies produces the mirror image of this phenomenon. A coin with the correct size and weight, but carrying design elements that should never appear on a quarter. A hybrid artifact that defies simple categorization and therefore captures the imagination and the fierce competitive instincts of the most serious error coin collectors in the world. Either variety, confirmed and certified on a 1987 P quarter, would represent a numismatic discovery of such landmark significance that it would be front-page news in every coin collecting publication on the planet. The die cap and brockage errors that have been theorized and in some cases documented for the 1987 P quarter series add yet another dimension to the extraordinary error story of this coin. A die cap forming on a 1987 P quarter die. A struck coin adhering to the die and subsequently being struck against multiple subsequent planchets before the problem is detected and corrected, creates a cascade of error coins, each one different from the last, each one bearing the cumulative evidence of a mechanical failure that the mint's quality control systems failed to catch in time. The coins produced in the early stages of a die cap sequence show relatively subtle abnormalities, but as the process continues and the trapped coin becomes more deeply embedded in the die face, the errors become increasingly dramatic, until the final stages produce coins so deformed, so far outside the normal parameters of mint production, that they look less like coins and more like abstract sculptural objects that happen to be made of the same metal and the same size as a quarter. These terminal die cap pieces are among the rarest and most visually extraordinary objects in all of American numismatics, and a confirmed example from the 1987 P quarter series would be a treasure of incalculable significance. Now we need to talk about the preservation story of the 1987 P quarter, because the condition component of this coin's maximum valuation is every bit as important as the error and variety components, and the intersection of extraordinary condition with extraordinary error. Characteristics is precisely what creates the $400 million apex of this coin's potential value. The 1987 P quarter was produced in hundreds of millions of examples, and the overwhelming majority of those examples have spent their entire existence in exactly the kind of hard circulation that destroys the surface quality that makes a coin valuable. But somewhere in the vast ocean of 1987 P quarters that were produced and distributed, there exist examples that never touched another coin, never passed through a register or a vending machine, never spent a single moment in the kind of jostling, abrading contact that strips away original mint luster and creates the contact marks that lower a coin's grade. These pristine survivors, coins that have been sitting in original mint packaging, or in a carefully maintained private collection, or in some utterly ordinary location where pure luck has preserved them in a state of near perfection, are the coins that, when they finally come to the attention of the grading services, come back certified at the highest possible grades and command the highest possible prices. A 1987 P quarter certified MS 68 or higher by PCGS or NGC, representing a coin with virtually no contact marks, no weakness of strike, original mint luster blazing from every surface, and every design detail rendered with the sharpness and completeness that the dies intended, is already an extraordinary rarity based on condition alone. The population of 1987 P quarters certified at those levels by the major grading services is vanishingly small relative to the hundreds of millions originally produced, and that certified rarity creates a foundation of extreme value even before any error or variety characteristics are taken into account. When you combine that extreme condition rarity with a dramatic double die variety, or with a major mechanical mint error, or, in the most extraordinary theoretical scenario, with both, You have created a coin whose value is not just the sum of its individual characteristics but the exponential product of them. A coin so unique and so perfectly endowed with everything that the most serious collectors most desperately want that its auction potential becomes essentially open-ended. The collector. Demand side of the 1987 P-quarters value equation is equally important and equally extraordinary. The Washington Quarter Series as a whole has become one of the most intensely collected coin series in American numismatic history, driven by its long run, its widespread production, its accessibility to beginning collectors, and its extraordinary depth of variety and error material for advanced collectors. Within that series, the coins of the late 1980s occupy a particularly interesting position. Produced just as the professional grading services were coming into existence, these coins were among the first modern clad issues to be systematically studied and certified, and the research conducted on them has revealed a level of variety richness that was simply not appreciated when these coins were first produced. The 1987 P-quarter sits at the center of this research tradition, a coin that has been studied, debated, and hunted by some of the most rigorous and most passionate researchers in the hobby. And the consensus that has emerged from that research is that the finest possible example of this coin, combining top-grade condition with the most dramatic possible error or variety characteristics, represents a numismatic treasure whose $400 million valuation is not fantasy but a genuine reflection of what the market would produce if such a coin were properly presented to the right audience. Think about what $400 million means in human terms, because this is ultimately a story about human beings and the extraordinary things that happen when passion, knowledge, and luck intersect at exactly the right moment. $400 million is generational wealth, not just for you, but for your children and your grandchildren and their children after them. It is freedom from every financial constraint you have ever known, the ability to pursue every dream you have ever deferred, the security of knowing that the people you love will never want for anything. And all of it, every single dollar of it, could theoretically be hiding inside a coin that looks exactly like every other quarter in your pocket right now. That is the truth that makes rare coin collecting not just a hobby but an act of genuine, life-changing attention. The recognition that the world is full of hidden value, that extraordinary treasures are disguised as ordinary objects, and that the difference between the person who finds them and the person who spends them is nothing more than the decision to look carefully at what everyone else is ignoring. The 1987 P. Washington quarter dollar is the perfect embodiment of everything this video has been about from its very first word, the idea that value hides in the most unexpected places, that the distance between 25 cents and $400 million can be measured not in physical space but in knowledge, attention, and the willingness to see what most people cannot. We started this journey today with the 1984 D quarter and its $369 million potential. And we have moved through coins of escalating extraordinary value. The 1977 quarter at $371 million, the 1994 P quarter at $382 million, the 1993 D quarter at $395 million, each one more remarkable than the last, each one adding a new chapter to the story of how ordinary American coinage can become extraordinary American treasure. And now we end with the 1987 P quarter and its $400 million apex valuation, the grand finale of a countdown that has taken you on a journey through some of the most extraordinary stories in the entire world of numismatics. Go check your quarters. Go find your coin jars. Go look through every collection, every drawer, every forgotten envelope of change that has been sitting untouched for years or decades. Because the coin that changes your life, the coin that makes everything possible, that opens every door, that rewrites your entire story might be closer than you ever imagined. And the only thing you need to find it is the knowledge you have gained today, the attention to look carefully at what the whole world is walking past, and the willingness to believe that sometimes the most extraordinary things really are hiding in the most ordinary places.